Welcome back, friends and colleagues. Today we're going to be doing a how-to and playthrough of the Russian campaign by GMT Games, where I am going to explain the rules, especially focusing on specifics that are important toward play and strategy and tactics. I'm also going to explain how I've changed a few rules, even omitted some, as I'm sure some of you do from time to time. Why would I do that? Well, I did it to enhance playability and realism, in my opinion. Of course, I figured this out after playing the game a number of times. By the way, I'm aware there's a protocol, a certain decorum, so to speak, that I've noticed among you nice people, and I'll be adhering to that process. I do this because of my admiration to the world of gaming and to you, my friends and colleagues. For enjoyment purposes, I won't show you every movement or roll of the die. What I'll concentrate on is strategy and results, along with explanations on how I do things. You may notice a few little things on the map board there. Those are my molded metal figures. They're just there temporarily. Don't worry, I'm going to move them as soon as we start the game. They're just holding down the map, kind of for decoration too. But also you can see that there are little markings on there. I put those there. Those stand for logistics, military infrastructure centers, and those are going to come in later. They contribute to playability. Before moving over to the map, we're going to take a quick look at the terrain effects chart. That is self-explanatory. I won't need to go over that. Also, you'll notice over there the air power availability chart. That is going to come in very handily, and that's an important chart. So we're going to keep that in mind. There's two charts above that, the Black Sea and Baltic sea movement. We're not going to be needing those. For playability's sake, I have omitted those, and it's going to take less time to explain the game by taking those out. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and read up on it, but for our purposes, you can just disregard those things. You and I are going to be conducting operational level warfare. That involves large regions and extended periods of time. You're not influencing smaller battles, as it were, but directing campaigns, concentrating armies, managing distance and supply, and deciding where months of military effort will be spent. These are the units that will be conducting operations. They are represented by cardboard cutouts. Each is a layered organization consisting of soldiers and equipment, administrative and logistical systems. For example, an armored corps might consist of several hundred tanks and armored fighting vehicles, 50 or so heavy artillery pieces, and several thousand infantry. A lot of board war games offer alternate versions of history, and this one does as well. So here's the alternate version. There's no Hitler. There's still a charismatic leader, just not the barbaric one who had death camps, one who treats captured territory fairly. There's no invasion of Yugoslavia, Greece, or Crete. Germany did not involve itself in North Africa. Unfortunately, Italy does lose North Africa and Albania, and itself is involved in the fighting the British in the Mediterranean. And then later on, there's no Battle of the Bulge. Don't get me wrong, the Germans are still aggressive and warlike. They just have a practical determination toward conquered peoples and territory. Ukraine, Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia, they'll all be allied with the Germans. These peoples will be liberated, assuming Germany completes certain objectives. And we're talking the game, of course. And then again, lastly, the game lasts until 1946. But what we're doing is just making things fun. Let's bring all available access units to the board. It'll give the Germans a chance to win. What do you think? A couple more things before we hit that map. Here you see a copy of the weather, the historical weather. This is the one I use. By the way, this is completely specified in the rules, so you can just look there. I printed it out by hand so I don't forget it. I don't know if you've ever played a war game and you forgot the weather, and the weather makes a huge impact in Russian campaigns. So don't want to forget that. That's why I have this little self-made chart. Second, we have the movement allowance chart, and it also specifies the first and second impulse, gives a little bit more understanding of how that works. Really great playability element within Russian campaign. And below that, of course, we have to have the combat results table. We're going to be talking about all those items: attacker eliminated, attacker loses one, things like that, retreating, contact, and exchanges. We'll talk about all of that. Just wanted to show you a quick look at the chart. Last thing about this chart is, you see in the middle, you're going to see those headquarters counters, the 17s and then the 10 Hitler. We already said that we're not going to be using the Hitler. We're also not going to be using the Stalin counter, though Stalin is definitely in Moscow. Okay, so but he's, as far as referring to him, we don't need to do that. That's just another thing in the rules that I've omitted. Also, the headquarters counters, we're just going to omit those. And again, for explanation purposes, we don't want a big, long, lengthy explanation. And if we take those out of the rules, it just makes it more playable and funner. And it's just my personal preference. Again, if you want to keep that in, just read up on it in the rules. But for now, disregard it. And that said about disregarding things, remember, I am including things as well. We have alternate history versions coming up, and we want to bring all the guests to the party, so to speak. And so I made some changes to the rules, so we're going to include that. So we're not shortening the game, per se. I think you'll like it. Anyway, you can let me know. All right. Well, let's move over to the map. Let's start with a little orientation of the map. Of course, you can see the north-facing arrow on the Baltic Sea, and we are looking at a northern part of the map itself, and we expand. Minsk is in the center. That is in Belarus. Kiev is part of the Ukraine. The black solid line is Romania, and that is a part of the German deployment area. Of course, you see Bulgaria there in the south. Some of the units I have stacked up. Sea of Azov and Odessa, Rostov. Odessa is a major objective of the Romanians and the Germans. And again, you can see the vast area of the map. There's the Valdai Hills. We're going to make that clear terrain. If we make it rough terrain, the Germans are not going to be able to proceed historically. That will stop movement and will cause heavy fighting. Up in the north, you'll see where there's Riga, Tallinn, and Kaunas. Those are Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania. Those are the liberated territories I was talking about, should certain objectives be captured. Of course, Moscow in the center. And to the east, you see, is where a lot of or the majority of Russian armaments production took place. Famous Stalingrad right there, which is going to be a major goal of the German forces. And you can see the oil production facilities in southern Russia. That is about it for the orientation of the map. Last thing I want to say about that, each one of those hexes is approximately 50 kilometers across. And so also one of those hexes will be a zone of control. So that will conclude the orientation. Let's talk about victory conditions for a couple of minutes, starting with the Russians. The Russians win automatically, hands down, if they take Berlin by the end of the game. That would be 1946. If they don't, they sort of lose in another way, because that would mean that the Allies are going to take Berlin, and the Russians absolutely must take Berlin to be considered the victors for after World War II. I mean, how are they going to control Eastern Europe if they don't have Berlin? So they got to get Berlin. Automatically, Germans lose. The Germans win by taking Moscow and the Stalin unit counter. And I know I did say before, we're not using that. We're not using any of the rules for the Stalin unit counter. But that is the center of Russian government. So wherever that moves, the Germans would absolutely have to follow. And so they can close in on the Stalin unit by taking territory, taking cities. And obviously, if you're taking cities, you're reducing their replacement values, and you're constraining the Russians from any type of victory or production or reinforcement if they continue to do that. So that's how the Germans win. Generally, if you push toward Moscow and Stalingrad and the oil fields and Leningrad and take all of that, a very difficult task, then you're going to win. And if the Russians can't take that back before 1946, they're going to lose, because, again, you got the Allies. And, of course, the Germans don't necessarily win, even though they get all that, because they're losing against the Allies as well. Just a quick thing. When I'm teaching somebody how to play this game here over my board, then I do what's called collaboration. Instead of playing against that person plays on my side. We're playing like I would solo. First, I start with the Germans, and I try to win with the Germans. Then I go to the Russians, and then I try with the Russians. We do this together. That way, it's an easier way to teach the person the rules. They're not trying to figure out the rules to try to beat me, and then I'm not making qualifications in my favor. It's just a way that I do it when I'm teaching somebody. Therefore, when I'm discussing the game with you, we're going to collaborate together. We are friends and we are colleagues on the same team. Just want to take a quick look at the Kiev Military District. This is the first place that we're going to be setting it up at. You can see the boundaries, those dotted lines, those green sparsed lines, and then of course you have the border to the Soviet Union at that time. And later, in just a moment or two, we're going to be setting up Russian forces, and they're going to be trying to block the Germans and prevent them from taking Kiev early on in the campaign. You can see the Russian forces off to the left there that will be used to set up. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we have that movement allowance chart nearby for the Russians, because as soon as the initial German attack is completed, then we'll complete for the Russians their movement. That's going to come in handy when they're trading space for survival. Also, just before deploying Russian forces, you'll notice that there's a Hungarian mechanized, motorized corps in Hungary that's ready to traverse that pass. That pass can be used as a road. That's one of my additional rules. However, anybody defending in that pass is doubled. For historical and reality purposes, I'm allowing that corps, that Hungarian corps, to deploy early. We're going to move into talking about stacking limits for a little bit. You can stack 2 armies high. That would be 4 X's, or 3 corps high, or 1 army and 1 corps. As you can see, we got an army and a corps per hex in front of Lvov, and 1 army is deployed in Lvov itself. This was the original deployment that I was thinking was best, except that the armored corps are not going to be enough to slow down the forces that are coming from Romania, and they would essentially cut off the Kiev Military District. So I changed it to another deployment, as you can see right here. And there you go. So that corps is taken out and replaced with an infantry army. I'm going to call a halt to our video for the day. I think I've given you enough. I'll leave you a little bit of homework. I will be studying the rules a little bit. And then in part 2 and beyond, we'll be getting more into deployments, and we will proceed with the war on these fronts, starting with Operation Barbarossa. Feel free to check out my book on Amazon.com. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.
Down